Christian parenting.
Welcome to Pardon the Mess. I'm your host, Courtney DeFeo. Parenting is messy. Can I get an amen? Like, it's physically messy. Stepping on Cheerios or maybe a cheeseburger wrapper falling out of your car in carpool. It's also emotionally and spiritually messy every day in every stage. On this podcast, you'll get some nuggets of wisdom on parenting and faith and find some super helpful resources. But my greatest hope is that you'll never feel alone in the hilarious, stressful, glorious, and painful journey of parenting. You guys ready? Let's laugh and learn together. Here we go.
You know how to book flights and hotels. All you're missing is a tool to plan the travel experiences you'll have once you arrive. That's why you need Viator. Book guided tours, activities, excursions, and more in one place to make your trip truly unforgettable. Viator has over 300,000 travel experiences to choose from. Everything from simple tours to extreme adventures and all the niche, interesting stuff in between. So you can plan something that everyone you're traveling with will enjoy. Real traveler reviews give the inside scoop from people who've already been on the experiences you're considering. So you can plan with confidence. Free cancellation helps you plan for the unexpected. And 24/7 customer support means you can travel worry-free. Download the Viator app now and use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Find travel experiences for you. Do more with Viator.
Okay, we've got on a guest that you guys have requested. Many of you have said, have you talked to Kari Kampakis? And I'm like, you know what? I love Kari Kampakis and I use her materials. I've read her books. I listened to her podcasts. We're friends in real life, and I love the wisdom and truth that she always brings on Instagram. So if you're not following her, she's got 4 girls, and I just cling to her words because it feels like somebody else that's in the middle of a high school journey with girls, and she's just so relatable and so honest. And so as I thought about this episode, I wanted to share some regrets, some like you look back and maybe help out the mom that's a little bit younger than you and say, I would have done this a little differently. I thought, who should I have on? And Kari just popped in my mind. I thought she will be honest. She will be so relatable, but also encouraging so that those of us that have also made mistakes aren't sitting there in shame, but we're going, you know what? Okay, I would have done that differently had I known. And here's how I'm going to do things differently in the future. And so we hope that this encourages some moms with younger kids. And we hope those of you that are still, have kids in your home but are older, that you won't end this feeling horrible about yourself, but you'll see that you're not alone. That Kari and I, although we talk about parenting a lot, we are as real as it gets. We mess up on the daily, and God covers all of that. So enjoy, my friend, Kari Kampakis. Good morning, Kari. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I don't know that I've told you, but I took Ella to look at Sanford, and she was like, I want to live in Homewood, period, the end. She was like, I don't know if I want to go to Sanford, but I definitely want to live in Homewood when I'm...
Yay! We'll get her to Birmingham in some form or fashion.
That's right. It's the cutest town. I love it so much. But how are your girls? Tell everybody who you are and how many kids you have and all that good stuff, and we'll dive into our topic today.
Okay. I am Kari Kampakis, and I am the mom of 4 girls here in Birmingham, Alabama, which you can probably tell by my accent. I always get that. Where are you from? Let's see. My girls, I have 2 in college. One is a junior at Auburn, and one is a freshman at Alabama. So that makes it kind of fun on Iron Bowl weekend. And then let's see. I have an 11th grader, which I know she lines up with your oldest daughter, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. So we'll talk about that. And then also an 8th grader.
Okay. Oh my goodness. And we were chatting before we got on that, oh man, what we know now that we didn't know when we first met and we first started blogging and writing, right?
Yeah. All the expertise you have when your kids are little.
I know. Yeah. I'm like, no one was like, hey, I don't know, Court, if you should write a parenting book when your kids are 2 and 5, but I was excited about it.
But you know what? Isn't it kind of fun to go back? Like, I love going back to those early blog posts and just the things you're writing about in the stories and where you were then. It just, it reminds you of that season of life. And I don't know if I'd remember it if it wasn't documented.
Exactly. I'm so glad I did it. And I think Jeannie, Kenyon, and I have laughed that we should go back because both of our books turned 10. Our first parenting books were 10 years old this year. We're like, we should go back and just edit. Be like, everyone open to chapter 5. Just crossed out that entire paragraph. But I think that same
hilarious.
Heart was there. It's like I have, just like we do now. It's like I have dreams and goals and aspirations and values and things we're shooting towards. And then how
Yes.
it plays out is often different. But the action and the goals aren't bad. So I want to tell young parents today, like, don't just give up because you know it's going to be rough. Just put your hands up. It's like, it's worth it. Don't you think it was worth it to have some
Yes.
like direction where you wanted to head with the girls?
Yeah. And, you know, and even Harry has said this. He read some parenting book or something. It was right before our kids came. And it said, at least from the father aspect, that it's good to kind of have your parenting strategy and what your
Mhm.
intentions are before you ever get into it,
Yeah.
because it'll keep you on track. And I think sometimes when our kids are little, we're actually better at that when they're younger.
Agreed.
And so even though we can go overboard or have these false fantasies of how it's
Yeah.
going to look, I do think it's a good thing. And actually, I think sometimes we lose that intentionality as they get older in a not so good
Man.
way. You know, sometimes we can just throw our hands up and you're like, no, they still need us. And so,
Yes. Gosh, that's
you know,
so true.
I
That's
do
so
think
true.
that it's not a waste, you know, that there's, especially when they're younger, that, but you know, I think what we know now is like, I would do things differently. I might have framed it differently, but like
Yeah.
you said, the heart is there. And
Exactly.
what I think is so beautiful is that, you know, God really does fill in the gaps and he fills in those voids. And that's why you get more humbled the longer you parent, because you
Oh my
realize
gosh,
when
yeah.
things do go right or something happens and it goes well, you saw that mess in the middle and you're like, I know that wasn't me. I know that was
Right.
God coming into this situation because I would do my part differently.
Exactly. My boss at Chick-fil-A, when I first got pregnant with Ella, they gave us a shower and he's an amazing leader. And he said, let me think if I can think how he said it, but he said, don't take credit for the good because then you'll have to take credit for the bad. And I was like, gosh, that's
Yes.
so true. Cause you're like, man. And I think you realize it with two different kids. Like Ella just like
Yes.
did what I told her. She sat there and sat in her high chair and she ate a Cheerio and she didn't throw it off the thing. And then
Right.
Larson came in like a wrecking ball. And I was like, wait, it wasn't me. This whole time it was
Right.
Ella.
Right. I always say that. I'm like, it's a good thing I didn't just have that first child, because she was the same way, just typical compliant, hit every milestone exactly when she needed to. And I
Yeah.
thought, I got this all figured out. And
Yeah.
then number 2 was the total opposite. So
That's right. How are I'm sure they're all so different. Are your girls just like completely different, 1 through 4?
yeah, they really are. And it's fun. I mean, and it's fun to see how God, you know, he works so differently in their lives too. My relationship is different with each of them. But again, Harry said this one time when they were younger, that it's such a gift that they're different because you can't compare them. You know, like it
Yeah.
really is apples to oranges. And if they were all so similar in all these ways, we probably would be comparing them in a lot more ways. But
Yeah,
they're so unique, it forces you to realize they are their own person.
that's
And
right.
you know, what worked for one might not work for another. And so that's really why you do have to know their heart and their personality and
Yeah.
what motivates them. So.
Yeah. Hey, I do want to stop and just encourage you. I think you know this, but I want to say it in front of people, but your work is so good. And I have friends
Aw.
like that it will send me stuff from you and go, do you know this girl? Have you read this girl? Have you had her on the podcast? I'm like, I do know her. But I do think you have you're a beautiful writer, but you're so realistic and encouraging and graceful in your approach, to not shy away from like, hey, let's aspire and shoot for the stars, but here's the reality of what your kid is walking through, and you're very real about the struggle, and you walk this beautiful line, because I don't ever see you throwing your kids under the bus, and you're respectful of their stories, but you're very real about, this is hard and I'm with you and there's hope. And so good job. I think it's
Oh,
hard to
thank
walk
you.
all those lines. So
It is. Well, you know, it's funny. And I think we realize this being kind of in that first generation of bloggers is like there's our story to tell, and then there's our kids' story to tell.
Mhm.
And that's one thing I just realized when my kids were little, like I would never want to sacrifice my relationship with them for my following, or to,
Yes.
you know, and as you probably know, I mean, that we've been through things that I'm like, this would probably go viral, but I'm not going to throw my kid under the bus like that. Like
Yeah.
maybe in 10 years I'll share it, or that'll be their story to share. But
That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
I was like, one day they will be able to write about us. And so the
Exactly.
tables
Oh
will
my
be turned.
gosh. And that's the topic of today. I've always said, like, I'll know things that have affected them, and I'll just joke that I'm like, well, let's put that in your counseling fund. So let's start like a GoFundMe that's like, here's your counseling. And I've tried to be honest with them now and say, hey, and like David Thomas says, don't go digging for pain and create wounds where there aren't. But I
Oh,
can
that's
tell some
good.
things that I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, let's go ahead and address it now. Like, and I asked him the other day, I said, is there things that like linger in your mind that I said that you want to just tell me so I can go ahead and take ownership for it? And they're like, no, well, and then, as the conversation goes, well, there's this one time you said this. And I'm like, oh gosh, because I have a
What a great
mouth.
thing to say to your kids. That is so good. Because I
Yeah.
think Sissy has said this, that they have these tapes in their head. And that's what
Yeah.
the counselors here in
Yeah.
the counseling office is. A lot of times it's what their parents said to them. As,
Yeah.
as you know, as moms, I'm like, we have so many opportunities to mess up every day.
Yeah.
That that's a great thing to say. What do you say? Like, is there anything I've said that's lingered in your head?
Yeah, lingered in your
Yeah,
heart
that's
or that
so
you keep
good.
thinking about that I can, and you can't take it back, but you do want to stop it so it's not coming out at 40 and go, my mom said this when
Yes.
I was 10 and I believed it for this many years. And I have a mouth on me. Like I can use my words for good. I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, but I am quick to throw out something that I think is sarcastic or funny. And you can just tell immediately by their face that I broke their little spirits. And I'm like,
Me
oh,
too. I know. I
oh,
know.
it's the
When it's
worst.
hard because I'm like, and I think Sissy, they talk about taking that backdoor approach, and I'm like, I'm a front door kind of person. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
grew up in a family where we told it like it was, and I brought that into parenting, and I'm like, that once they become teenagers, that does not go over well.
No,
So
it doesn't. It doesn't. Well, we have about 120 things we regret as parents. Me and you talked offline. So we're going to try to keep it to three, but I'll start with one. We'll just go back and forth. But I made a list of really fast ones to sneak in some. I mean, it could be from lack of photo organization. Holy crud. I have too many photos. I wish I had, when they were little, started like best of whatever, best of 2019 or whatever. I also kicked a trash can one time, like donkey kicked it out of anger, and we laugh about it now, but I'm like, what was my problem? Like, what made me so mad that I kicked a kitchen trash can? I wish I'd made them keep a budget because I say yes at everything.
that's good.
Another one, I'm terrible at follow through. Like, I'll just say, here's the chore chart, and by Tuesday, everything's fallen off the thing. But I've got three main ones that I thought of many. But the first one is I really do wish, some of these will make me cry, that I had a third child. And here's what I think: if you're listening and you decide to get pregnant tonight and your husband's going to kill me, just bear with me.
Name your child Courtney.
That's right. That's right. I think when you're in it, especially when your second one or third one is really hard, you're like, I don't know if I can do
Yes.
this again. Like, and it feels so overwhelming. And you're like, I'm at my max capacity. And then I was blogging and writing and speaking, and I couldn't see beyond that moment and was like, how would I do this? And I don't think there's an easy time to be like, oh, let's throw another child in that. And Ron and I prayed a little, but I don't think we were like, we prayed a lot about it. And really, we just were like, he was kind of like, oh no, two's great. Two fits in the car, two's a hotel room,
Right.
like everything's just neat. And he didn't really feel, but I don't think I pushed him enough to say, like, this is really important to me. And I think we will appreciate it down the road, like when we have grandkids and when, they're high schoolers. But so I just wish I'd paused a little bit longer to say, I don't have to write right now, or I don't have to like have this job, and just be able to look a little bit further. So how about you give one, but can you react to that? Like, how did you decide how many kids you were going to have, and what advice would you have for people on that?
Yeah, and just to relieve anybody, because I have a lot of friends who are in your exact same situation, that they wanted a third, that like I had some that really wanted a third and their husband didn't. And it was a source of an argument. But
Yeah.
I guess Harry and I both came from bigger families, so we always wanted three, but you're like, whatever God gives us. But just to relieve the moms who feel like that, is like, there's a lot of guilt that comes with having more than two. And
Yeah.
even like, I'll find myself as they were growing up, especially when I had four, and a few years ago when I was just in the thick of it, just feeling like I am so inadequate. Like I can't give everybody the attention that I want, or we can't do this fancy vacation every year because it's expensive with six people you're buying a plane ticket for. Like it just, there are sacrifices you make for a bigger family. And it's really easy to go down that road of like, I mean, not that I would ever regret my children, but like, man, if we just, there's a lot of us. And so I'm so thankful now, but it was really hard. And it's funny for me, like I would say my hardest year of parenting was that having three under the age of 4, like that year about did me in. Like that was harder than any of the teenage years I've been through. I'm like, maybe God was just preparing me for whatever was coming ahead. But it is really hard when they're young. But like you said, I think and it depends. If you really feel like God's calling you to have another child, explore that. And something I'm seeing that's a little bit different, that I was talking to a stay-at-home mom the other day. she's kind of dabbling in some photography on the side, but she said that most of her friends work. Like she's one of the few that stays home. And I was like, that's so interesting because when I had young kids, most of my friends stayed home.
Yeah.
Now people started to gradually work, but they kind of did it like you and I did. We dabbled, knowing that one day we would, do more.
Yeah.
So just like you said, and I remember people saying there's really just that window of opportunity to have your children. And so it is sometimes if you're in it, you're in the diapers and the baby stage and the sleepless nights. And you just go for it.
That's right.
I was not intending to have 4, honestly. Like I like some order, and I tell Camille like now I just look at God and I say thank you. Like I did not have the foresight to pray for her, but that was a hard pregnancy. I cried that whole pregnancy. I just started getting my life back after 3. I was starting to write, like I was feeling like myself again. And then I got pregnant. And I remember having to tell myself, okay, Kari, you're married. You have 3 kids already. You can handle another baby. But I felt like I was like a 16-year-old finding I was pregnant. Like that's because it felt so overwhelming. And now, the minute I met her, it's like all of that evaporated and she's been the biggest blessing.
So sweet.
So I'm so thankful. But, God, I think God works with all of our stories, whether we have 1 child or 4 kids or 5 kids or whatever. But it's
agree.
hard. It's hard.
I will tell you, I have baby fever now. And now I'm like, well, Ella, like you're a junior. Please don't have a baby right now. But I'm starting to go, okay, I can't be a mom, but I can be a grandmother eventually.
I know. Me too. I see these babies in church and I'm like shaking, like quit. Like I'm like wanting to reach out and just grab them. And I'm like, these moms will think I'm nuts.
And the last full circle thing I will say is God knows your heart. And so like, he will be creative about it. I really thought, maybe I'll adopt. And then he said no. Ron said no. And I thought, okay, then Lord, just bring me like a baby, like put me in a situation where we can't turn down a child. And we ended up bringing an older child into our lives that we met that was in her early like college years. And she had lost her mom. And she's now really a part of our family. Like we didn't legally adopt her, but the girls will tell you they have a sister. And so I couldn't have seen that come in. And I knew we had space and love in our heart to have another child. And so it's just been really sweet and unexpected to fold her in a way that she feels like another child of mine. And so I did get a 3rd child, just differently than I thought. So.
Yes.
All right. So tell me one of your regrets. It's confession time.
Yes. I would think one of my regrets, and I think a lot of moms would, most families, especially if you're more than 1 child, you got one that's a little bit more strong-willed than another. And I think I would go back and tell myself to parent the heart and not the behavior. And I've just started writing something on this recently, but I had one that she was a strong-willed toddler, and I thought it was my job just to like break her, not break her spirit, but like get her in line. And I was always getting on to her. I was always reprimanding her, and she wouldn't listen to me. And I was just like, I got a circus, like y'all have to cooperate. And I'd say left, and she'd go right, and she was just real social. And I was like, oh my word. But what I noticed was that like my husband took a different approach. Now, he is very laid back. We're so opposite. And I'm really impatient. I'm like, you do it now. But he would come home and he'd be like, come here for a minute, and he'd sit her in his lap and he'd whisper to her and just talk quietly to her. And then they would talk for a minute and then he would just hug her. And then she would listen to him. And granted, it's different for dad because he's not home all day and they respond differently to dad than to mom. But what I noticed about this child when she was little, I was like, I noticed that she would sometimes just go hug him randomly for no reason. Wow. And she would not do that to me. And, I think those are the moments that God opens our eyes. Like maybe there's something to his approach. And sometimes I would get mad at him because I thought when he took her, he would like lay down the law, but he took a different approach. And I thought he was being too soft on her. But, I was like, but now I was like, now I realize it's like God. It's like knowing when you know how much God loves you. When you are secure in that love, you can take the discipline. You can know he's doing something for your good, even if you're hurt or you're upset about it. And I think it's the same thing with our kids when they know that even if we're having to discipline them or tell them something, correct something they've done, if they know they're secure in that love, then it's going to make all the difference in how they receive it. I think Kari, they say, what is it? To connect before you correct. Yeah. And and even this child, but now she's in college and she's awesome. Like that's exactly what people love the most about her. And it was my favorite thing about her as she was growing up, but it's made her such a great leader as she's grown up. And now that she's gone off to school, I mean, I tell moms, I'm like, you want a daughter with some grit. Like they need it in this day and age, like you need that. And so, but it is neat. But I told her, I was like, that's one thing I would do differently. And I even told her a few years ago, I was like, I was going through your baby book and I had to tear out a few pages because I was just talking about how hard you were, as I was documenting. And so now I can kind of joke with her, like, I hope you have 3 kids like you with that spirit.
Isn't that the truth? I think when they're little and they are running in the street and throwing things and stuff, it's like, this child's going to be in jail. And I have one like that.
Yes.
And I do think that people are like, oh, you just wait, they're going to be a leader. You just want to throw something, but you're like, it is true. Mine is the same. Like, I wouldn't change a thing about her, but it is difficult to parent a toddler like that. So I love that God gave her both of you, because I'm sure she needed your structure too. But man, what a cool memory. I think people remember that story. That is really, really good. Good job. As parents, we are all juggling busy households. Sometimes life gets a little messy, and that's why I love Home Threads, the perfect blend of comfort and style for your lively household. Home Threads has everything you need to make your house a little more peaceful in our chaotic world. At homethreads.com, find furniture that's resilient as your family. From pieces that stand the test of time to kid-friendly organizing and storage solutions, we've got the essentials to turn your mess into a masterpiece, all at the best value. I have received some pots and pans, some pillows, and a beautiful lamp. And I can say I truly love the value, and they just look great in my home, and I enjoy them so much. So thank you, Home Threads. Head on over to homethreads.com/mess and get a code for 15% off your first order today. Because life's messy, but your home doesn't have to be. Home Threads, where style meets the everyday mess. Home Threads, love where you live.
Grand Canyon University makes earning your degree possible with over 130 academic programs for traditional campus students, with more than 80 bachelor's programs offered online. GCU provides you with the personal support you need, from complimentary unofficial transcript evaluations within 24 business hours to scholarships, academic support, and your GCU graduation team, led by your own university counselor. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
My second one is a hard topic, so I'll have to figure out how I'm going to dance around this. But okay, so nutrition and health is something I've never done and been good at. It's been a struggle. I don't like to cook. And so I feel like we've been good at moderation. Like, we're not just eating like crazy people all the time, and we're not restricting them all the time. And so my thought was moderation. I'm not going to get onto them or ever speak to them about don't grab that cookie. Or I just knew with girls, I had to be really careful about what I talk about. And so now that they're teenagers and we're having discussions about, well, they wish they fit in this dress or this or that, it is hard to start things and them not feel like I'm telling them to go work out, or it's like pot calling kettle. I'm like, let's eat better this week. And then I'm in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru 4 times. And so I do wish.
And you're like, but I used to work for Chick-fil-A. So
exactly. And so I think I'm already rising angst in people, because there's not a perfect way. It's just, I wish this is one thing we could take away from the female struggle, is like, they're not going to doubt themselves, and there's no perfect way to do it. But I do wish early on I had talked about nutrition and health as matter of fact, that we feel better when we have fruits and vegetables. We have more energy when we've had some eggs instead of a hash brown, and we can go run on our soccer team. And I wish those like healthy talks about it would have been when they were little, not because it's like, hey, you need to fix your body. It's like, or that we would have gone on family walks, and not now going, hey, let's go exercise. And then one of them is saying, are you trying to make me exercise? And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to start something here 17 years in. That we should have been doing. So that's a lot. But how was that ever a struggle for you, or how would you encourage us as moms of girls in that area?
Yes. I mean, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It is so tricky with daughters. And we've all seen the statistics that so many eating disorders are pointed back to moms, and it might be like, there was a girl in my community I heard a couple of years ago that she'd go running 4 miles a day before school, and her mom would go with her, like there are certain. And so I think sometimes I was kind of the same way. And I had an eating disorder in high school that I talked a little bit about in More Than a Mom. But I think because of that, I was so so set on like, I don't want to do this to my children. And so I was kind of the same way. Like, I don't want to be like, no forbidden foods. But so I would always get the Pop-Tarts and the Doritos and the things at the grocery store because that's what I ate growing up. And that was fun. And I will say, to give us both a little mercy here, that I think there's a lot more better narratives now than there were when our kids were little. Like now, I would, we could say things. You have all these people talking about the importance of protein in every meal. And having teenagers, the other thing is, as they get older, their eating also affects things like their acne. Yes. And so, what you learn with older kids is like, man, I wish I'd done things when they were younger a little differently to set the stage for the teenage years, that all of a sudden their face is breaking out, but they're also driving. And then when they start driving, you lose a little control over what they're eating because you might not have it at the house, but they can go get their favorite chocolate covered peanuts at CVS.
Yes, right. That's right.
And so, it is hard. And so I've kind of been the same way. It's like trying to have that. And I don't really know the right thing. And I sometimes get that question from young moms. But I do think, having it in moderation, talking about like food as fuel and just really paying attention to how it makes you feel. And I have a friend who does nutrition, and she used to always say the 80-20 rule. We keep 80% of the stuff in our house is really good and healthy. And then 20% we allow some snacks. But she's like, my kids are so used to eating the healthier food because she started when they were younger, unlike us. They're so used to that they know when they eat the unhealthier food, it doesn't make them feel good. Yeah. And so just really helping our kids kind of tune into for themselves, like, how do you feel after that? But
that's
I don't know.
It's tricky. Yeah, it is super tricky.
But I think there's a lot of things we can have the conversation, just, the way that food is processed in America. And I have friends they have kids with gluten allergies, but yet they can't have gluten in America, but they can go to Italy and eat gluten. And I think those are important conversations to have with our kids, like just the way that food is manufactured here and just, the things in it. But
and I think, like you said, the moderation, like it's the extremes that I notice that are really messing with people. Like the kids that come over to my house that are never allowed to have a piece of sugar are like ravenous. They're like digging through my candy drawer. And so mine's out all the time. And I've seen my kids, like they don't overdo it on sugar because it's not a huge forbidden thing. And so again, I'm not the model of this, but it's tricky. And it's tricky. So, all right, second one, confession time for you.
So the second one is missing the joy of certain seasons, or missing, like, I feel like that's something I'm really trying to be more intentional about, is not letting my stress or anxiety or fear or worry just like blind me to the joy. Because in every single season of parenthood, there's some kind of joy. Yeah. And a young mom in our neighborhood said one of her favorite pieces of advice came from an older woman who told her, when you wish away the hard parts of a season, you wish away the good parts of that season too. True. And so you're wishing away, we're talking about how hard it was with toddlers and babies, but I'm like, I was also wishing away those little sweet snuggles on the couch and their little tummies when you put on their little pajamas and how they smell when they get out of the bathtub and you're hugging them, and just Christmas morning. Like there were so many sweet things. And I think in every season we can miss that joy. And one story that comes to mind that I look back, we were watching some old videos. My kids love to watch the old videos now. Yeah. And so there was one that I'd bought this big blow up pool at Target because I'm like that mom, probably the Target mom of like, let's just put this on the aisle and they'll buy it, the impulse buy. So I'm like, I had to see this pool with all the bells and whistles, like picturing this beautiful Saturday morning. I think I just gotten my kids like 3 matching bathing suits. Like I was doing photography at the time. This was before social media, but I was like, I could get some cute pictures of them. Like I had it all planned out in my head. So we had the pool set up to use on Saturday morning, and I was going to get them in their bathing suits. And the next thing I know, I hear splashing outside, and they're all outside in ther pajamas, in the pool. The baby had a diaper on, and so it's getting full of water. So how that looks. We've all been there. And I'm like, no, get out of the pool. Like, y'all, come on, we got to put on your bathing suits. I'm like, you're not doing it properly. Like, you're not playing properly. That's right. And my husband was like, just let them play. It's funny. And I was just so irritated because I'm like, no. This is not how it's supposed to be.
No, this is not the picture I had in my head.
And so maybe he'd gotten it on tape, but it was so funny watching myself now that I'm like, that poor mom, like I missed the joy. Like now I look back and it's hilarious. And I'm so glad we captured that. Like that is a much better memory than if it had looked picture perfect. But at the time, because of what I had in my head and what I wanted it to look like, it just frustrated me.
Yeah, that's a great caution. I'm fighting for that right now with my junior because it's so intense and everyone told you it was going to be, but the testing and the where will I go and all that stuff. And I'm like trying to tell her and me, like, we got to still enjoy this. Like, you're still in my home and we're still hanging out. And so how are you? Tell me a joy moment you're having with the junior. Give me some hope.
Well, I guess I know now that junior year is probably my least favorite year. Yeah. It's just stressful, especially, if you have a child that really has to study hard or they're taking a heavier load. I mean, to the point that now I'm like, okay, if you want to come down next year, we know that like Marie Claire's a junior. We know she'll be going to Auburn. She did the Auburn First program last summer. And so I'm like, you don't have to do all advanced or AP. Like, and once we knew my older girls, if they knew they were going to Alabama or Auburn, like, don't kill yourself,
That's right.
Like, you got to really, and so probably my youngest, I'd be like, Camille, you don't have to take any advance because now I'm like, mental health, right? That's right. They get the best of the parenting sometimes. But yeah, I think the joy, I mean, honestly, this is my opinion. I think senior year is so much better. Like junior year is just hard and it's stressful for them. And for me, I think it's a time really to really find your joy. I'm not saying you can't find your joy in your child, but make sure you're investing in your marriage or your friendships and those other relationships, because it's just a year where they just need a lot of love and support. Like, okay, can I get you your favorite Greek salad to have home after your test, or your favorite hamburger, like just something just to love them along the way.
So good.
Because it's so stressful. And when they're stressed, they're not very loving toward us because they're so focused on their life. But I do think like anything we can do to, if we can, take some of that burden off to make senior year a little bit more enjoyable.
That's great.
I enjoyed senior year a lot more than I have junior year.
Okay, good. That's a good word. Larson yesterday said, Ella's in a bad mood. I said, I know, but it's been a tough week. Like, she had the ACT. It was really hard. And she's like, but she's mean when she's stressed. I said, well, aren't we all? Like, if I
exactly.
I have a headache, I'm a total butt. So I was like, just trying to give her grace. And I think you had said something perfectly. It's like, we can't change it. Like, we can take some relief, but at some level, there's some pressures that they're just walking through that is hard, that you wish you could take it away, but it's tough. So love that. This is another one where my mouth gets me in trouble. So I'm a little bit of a hothead. So say someone hurts my kid, then I freak out, which I know not to freak out. Sandra Stanley told me to not freak out. All the books we've written say don't freak out. Right. Then I overreact in the heat of the mama bear moment. Someone has wronged them. A teacher did something or a friend didn't invite them. And then not always, but I will overact and send the email. And then the next day I am horrified. I'm like, if you just, and I've gotten better about it, but I wish I could go back to that mom and say, wait 24 hours, like sit on it. Like when you wake up in the morning and you've had your coffee, you will not be as hot about this. You will fight or flight will come down. You will breathe and you will realize the world isn't ending and not everyone's out to hate your daughter. But there's something that like magnifies that intensity when it's someone hurting your baby and you feel they've been wronged. You're like, I'm going to come out swinging like a crazy person.
Yes.
So to all the people I've sent snarky emails to, I just want to say I'm so sorry. And I wish I had sent less. So do you deal with that? Tell me you have.
Yes. I think we all do. And I think, again, it kind of goes back to my earlier stories. And one thing that I've really had to remind myself of is like feeling secure in God's love. Like when I'm beating myself up over something like that, it's so easy for us to stay there. Like I've ruined it. I'm a terrible mom. I'm going to have no friends. Like I totally overreacted. And I think it's really easy for us to stay stuck there. And so when I have a moment like that, like you, I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but and you kind of see how things work out. But, I think it's that like one, if we can go apologize where necessary, just learning that art of reconciliation, whether it's with our child or somebody else, just like, you know what, I blew up and I'm sorry. I think that's huge. And then two, just giving ourselves grace and say, I can't change that. But next time I feel that way, I know that I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to work on my anxiety and I'm going to come down and before I do anything. But an example that goes with that is a mom that shared this with me recently that I was like, that is so good. It's actually a mom in Texas, and she was telling me that they have a theater group her daughter's part of, and they have a 24-hour rule. And it came because in my talk, I was talking about Mama Bear and how we can get like revved up. I was like, even the sweetest, most gracious Southern woman has Mama Bear in her, like you do not mess with Mama. Like, I don't care if she looks like the cover of Southern Living. There is Mama Bear in there, like you do something to our kid, like in nature, this made me feel better. We went out west a few years ago and they're saying in nature, nature, like mama bear, like I think 70% of grizzly deaths is from a mama bear protecting her cub. And in nature, that the mama bear spends 2 years protecting their baby bear, like teaching them, like hiding them and teaching them how to secretly like navigate the realities of bear world. But here's the kicker, like they're not safe from any other bears out there, not even their own fathers, because the father will kill the baby to mate with the mother again.
Whoa.
I know. So I'm like, mama bear's real. And so I think, giving ourselves that grace, like having that protective instinct, it can be a good thing. I think we can definitely overreact. But again, knowing like if you don't have that instinct, poor child, like they need us to be protective sometimes.
Yeah.
But what this woman in Texas was saying, that they had this theater group and they have a 24-hour rule. It's a Christian theater company. And when they give out the parts for a play, you only learn what you and your child got in that play. And for 24 hours, you can't talk about it beyond your family. You can't tell anybody what role they got. You can't email. You've got to think about it. You just like sit with it for 24 hours.
Wow.
But she told me, she goes, I cannot tell you how many times that rule has saved me, because she was like, this past time, I thought my daughter deserved to get the lead. She's been in the ensemble 50 million times. And yet again, she got the ensemble. And she was like, we're going to change companies. I'm going to send an email. And she was like, my daughter's the one who has to talk me off the ledge. Like, Mom, please. No, I'll never get a lead if you do that. And she was like, I was just so hot. But then she waited a day and she saw it differently and she was able to respond differently. So like you said, I think if we can just have that 24-hour rule, whether it's a organization or a person or a teacher or whatever. I'm the same way. Even I have found that sometimes when I read an email that I take offense to, when I read it one day, if I'm hot, I'm reading it, I'm thinking one connotation here, but then if I read it the next day, I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's not, I don't take it the same way.
That's right.
And I've even had my husband. I think this is where we can bring in those people we trust. Like sometimes I'll have him look at something. That's right. Like, tell me what you see, tell me, am I crazy? Sometimes this is what he also says too, instead of sending an email, if you're angry, like calm down and then call the person.
Yes.
So sometimes like, I don't want to call them. He's like, call them.
Yes, that's so true. It's like, how rational of you
to
suggest that, jerk.
That's right. That's right.
I will say too, as I look back, and I think I've grown so much in this area, thankfully, is like you can see where God is working it out. And it's like, do we think we know our child best and we know the best for them? We do. But sometimes God's like, no, I have something else in mind for them. I have a part, I had a friend not make the cheerleading team. Everybody went nuts. She ended up getting into plays and being the lead and loved her life. And the mom would tell you now, like, I'm so embarrassed. We freaked out at that rejection because God had something bigger for her in store. And I do, if you're friends with any teachers, they will tell you it is very common. Like they know who the frequent flyers are. They know who the complainers are. Like, it's like, oh, she's up here again. So I would say like, choose carefully. Don't every year throw a fit about the teacher they got. Just be like, is this the one that really, like if they're in the room with a bully that is like punching them, go to the school. Right. But if it's just like their preference, their best friends in the other class, it's like, it's okay. It's okay. Don't freak out. And so I think that now when I go to the principal, which I did recently about something, I hadn't seen him in a long time. And he was like, so he really appreciated my calm demeanor as a high school mom versus my elementary freak out.
Oh, it's so true. And I think even with other moms too, I'm like, if we want to be heard and have credibility, then I think choosing our battles wisely is so important because especially when your kids are little, there's always one or two moms that they call people over everything, and it's like, if you kind of get that reputation of always freaking out over every little thing, then people are going to stop taking your phone calls, you just lose credibility. But I think, like you said, if you rarely are the one to do that, you save it for the big things, then you're more likely to be heard.
Awesome. All right. Last one for you. A regret.
Okay. I would do things differently with the cell phone. Just our generation was really the first generation parenting with that. So that's what I tell these parents behind us. And when the kids are getting them even earlier than our kids did, like you never hear a parent say ahead of you that says they wish they'd given their child a cell phone earlier. Yeah. Never. Yeah. And my kids got them when our kids are in 6th grade going into 7th grade. That's when they start the junior high. So mine always got it kind of like around 6th grade graduation. And they were always around the last to get it then. Which now it's even earlier. But, the reasoning is I want to be able to, call them. I want their Life 360. But now there's alternatives out there, for the main reasons why we give them those phones early. But there's just so much research, and I talk about it when I have, talks with girls. There's, you never see research that it says it's good for the mental health of teenage girls.
That's right.
And then on, things like TikTok, I'm like, we don't know, once they get on those apps like that, we don't know what they're exposed to. They could be exposed to more in one day than we were in 3 years
Absolutely.
at their age.
Absolutely.
So that's something, especially now, I think that social media, because it's been around longer and apps, that it's been twisted.
Yeah.
In a lot of new ways that are really scary for this next generation. So I just want to encourage all those parents trying to do the wait till 8 or, go slow, all those campaigns. Like, I'm like, yes,
yes,
amen. I don't think you'll ever wish you had done it earlier.
Exactly. Sissy says, and we're our buddy Sissy, we just keep quoting her because they're the best. We're like, Sissy Goff says, basically Jesus himself has said, but she said, don't let them be the first or the last, but close to the last, which is, we did the same thing. But it's like the peer pressure gets high, and they are like, I think I caved in on some social media before. I should have with both of my girls too, but it is difficult. It's difficult to wait. But then I got on TikTok to see what they were saying, and I got addicted myself. And I'm like amazed at like what flashes by. And you're like, what the heck? I was just watching a Harry Styles like video, and all of a sudden somebody's thong is in my face. Like, what is happening? It is so crazy. So that's a big piece people don't talk about. It's less about what our kids are doing and what they're exposed to. Yes. It's really scary. For sure.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
I have I was doing something for a new book I'm working on. There was something from the Bama Rush video and I was like, I just want to see what Bama Rush on TikTok's about. So I was like, I just got on there for that reason. And
OOTD.
OOTD. And I'm like, what in the world? And so now, Courtney, you would just laugh. You get on my TikTok and it's like, get ready with me. And it's a cheerleader or a dance girl. And I'm like flipping it, like my whole feed is, filled with this. These girls are like, I'm like, I like you natural. Like, it's beautiful with no makeup and no hair done. And then it's like, get ready with me. I'm like, gosh, what is this? Yeah, it's a whole different world.
Kari, you are the best. I know that before we got on, you had talked about a theme and the moms that you are meeting that are younger right now. And I think this would probably been true of us, but we want to get it right so bad. And we're like, whatever the formula is, I will do every single thing. So tell us your perspective. Encourage us to say like, hey, newsflash, it's not going to go great. Encourage us that still desperately. It's like the thing we want to do better, anything in the world. It's like that mama bear is not only protect, but it's like, I love these humans so much. I would like throw myself in front of a train. So I surely want to get the nutrition right. And what I say about technology. And I want to, I just want to get it all right so bad.
Yeah, I do. I see these young moms and they are so scared to fail. And I know we were the same way because you go into it with this idea that you're going to be perfect. But then when you've been doing it 20 years, like you and I have, like, I've messed up so many times, but God works with that. Mm-hmm. And so I just say, just really encouraging these moms. There's so many things stealing their peace. They have so much advice. I mean, a friend was like, I thought I could eat oatmeal. And then I saw another video that says, don't give them oatmeal. Like, there's so much stinking advice on every subject that we didn't have to filter through. We were just getting our advice. And so they've got so much, but really just leaning into their faith and, spending time quiet with God and not letting this world and all these opinions steal their joy and steal their peace. And just know that, if you do fail, like I really think that, if you're parenting with God, and you're like, okay, God, I messed up. I mean, he really can work with that. Yeah. And I mean, just an example of like, you get to be where we are now. And I'm the same way. Like, I don't want grandkids anytime soon, but I'm so excited. Like, I cannot wait for that season. And part of me is also like, I'm going to do it better this time around, like knowing what I know. And a lot of it is just that, when they're little, like with your first child, you don't know what you're doing, but like just little things like by the time I had Camille, like I was a lot deeper in my faith. I had written several books. And so I grew up, she would see me read my Bible more and just like she'd take her Bible to church like I do. So now she and her friends, 8th grade, they're doing these Bible studies. They do quiet time every morning. It's things I always try to get my older kids to do at that season, but they just didn't. And I wasn't really modeling the quiet time for them. But here's just an example. And so for a while, I kind of felt guilty, like, man, I should have been doing this with everybody. But I was in different seasons with each child. But like now my oldest child's at Auburn, and she has grown so much in her faith at Auburn. Like God has filled in the gap. I mean, I planted some seeds while she was here, but he has more than filled in that gap. And she has grown so much in her faith there. And it had nothing to do with me. It's just the friends and the experiences he's brought into her life. And she has grown in ways I never expected. And it's better because I'm like, I can't take credit for it. Like that was God's doing.
Yeah. And it's her own faith. It's her
own faith. It was not me drilling it in, making her have a quiet time every morning. Now she's great about it. I mean, she comes home and she does her quiet time, but it's not something, a habit she took into college. It was something but I prayed about it and something. So I guess I just share that as an example. Like even when we feel like we've missed the boat on something, like pray about it, give that to God and just ask him to fill in that gap or to fill in that void. Because if we're praying something good for our child, then God wants it even more than we do. Like he wants what's good for them too.
So good. Do y'all see, if you don't already, go follow her podcast and her Instagram and everything. It's just wisdom all day long. So thank you. What are you working on? You've got so many great books. Tell us what's coming out. I think you've got coming out in 2025. Is that right?
Yes. I have a new book. I'll be announcing it soon. A new book for teen girls coming out in January 2025. Yay. And then a new book for moms of girls coming out in August 2025.
Awesome. And what's the last one? More than a Mom? Is that the name of it?
More Than a Mom.
Okay. That is a phenomenal. Because how many times do you say that? Like, I'm just a mom. I'm just a mom. And so we kind of downplay our role. So that's a tremendous resource for people. Thank you for doing this. It was like a free counseling session. I got to dump some things out. Be like, when they're in counseling in 10 years, I'm like, I already took credit for that. Go back to my podcast.
Right. I owned up to it. I know, me too. We're gonna send this to all of our kids once it comes out.
Exactly. And the last thing I'll leave us with is my mom said, love covers a multitude of sins. And that's a verse. But she, my mom didn't have Instagram or blogs or podcasts or books or anything. She had Jesus and she loved the snot out of us and unconditionally. And so I think you look back and that was the thread of our home life with her is that, she still disciplined us, but like we knew so deeply that our mom loved us and that we could come back in on the mistakes. And so I think that is relief for me and for the moms listening today is like, at the end of the day, if you're praying and you're loving your kiddos, like it's going to be all right.
Courtney, you'll love this. The teen book that I'm working on, I'm doing edits right now, so it's fresh in my mind. But the section that I have on family, that's the exact verse that I used, is that love covers a multitude of sins. So I can't think of a better message to end this on, especially for those young moms behind us.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah. All right, you're an amazing mom, and I'm praying our girls end up at Auburn together.
I know. I thought the same thing too. When I saw it Lawson, that's a junior.
Do, Auburn first because we're in Texas, but Auburn's still at the top of the list. So we're praying she ends up there. So that'll be fun.
Okay. Well, you keep me posted because they will definitely have to meet.
Let's talk soon. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye. Thank you. I loved it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Pardon the Mess. As always, we've got more encouragement and resources over at christianparenting.org. And you can also stay connected with us on social media at Pardon the Mess. And if you like this episode, I'd love for you to do two things. Press follow on whatever podcast platform you love, and also be sure to leave a rating so other parents can find us. Remember, you're never alone in this beautiful mess of parenting.
Grand Canyon University, an affordable private Christian university, is one of the largest and fastest growing universities in the country, offering more than 270 programs online. In addition to federal grants and aid, GCU's online students received nearly $130 million in institutional scholarships in 2022. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu/myoffer to see the scholarships you may qualify for.